Which of the woody ornamentals are best for your landscape? The choices are abundant and attractive. Tonight we'll look at rhododendrons and azaleas, plus we tour a serene space in Smithville where the garden is meant to be walked on. It's a special edition of Great Gardening at the Arrowhead Home and Builders Show, and it's straight ahead.
Every tree has a moment when it shines.
That's called moneywort or creeping Jenny.
You can go in and do a rejuvenating pruning.
Forage and feed for our native pollinator population.
A garden really gives you peace of mind.
Hello and welcome to Great Gardening. This season premiere is being recorded in front of a live audience at the Arrowhead Home and Builders Show. So welcome to all who have stopped by to join us. And as always, we're welcomed by two masterful gardeners. Bob Olin, a horticulturist from St. Louis County. Thanks for being with us, Bob. And Tom Casper, a professional gardener who serves with both the Duluth Garden Flower Society and Duluth Community Garden Program. And tonight, we're putting your expertise to the test.
Great. We've been waiting all year for this.
Are you guys ready?
We're ready.
You ready to do it face to face?
Face to face.
Okay. I want to start first, though, by asking you if you've seen anything popping out of the ground out there yet.
Well, yes. Obviously we're early. We melted a lot of the snow off, and the projections are for warm and dry going forward. Now, we all know what weather projections are all about, so we'll have to wait and see. But we're seeing certainly greening on the southern exposures. It's very evident. We'll get a little moisture now, and I think we're going to get off to an early start here.
I know you've seen some shoots come up. Tom, tell us what's coming.
Lots of perennials starting to come up, and even seeing some rhubarb in some places starting to come up.
Oh, really?
Exciting
Rhubarb.
to see our season get going. With the last couple of winters we've had with really a late start, it's kind of nice to see this a little bit earlier start this year. So.
Okay, great. Well, our topic tonight is woody wonders, those hardy, early blooming shrubs that renew our gardening passions in the spring. Specifically, we're talking about azaleas and rhododendrons. And last summer, we visited a local garden center with several well-established examples.
They look so tropical and they're so wonderful, and the huge blossoms and the big leaves, and I think that's probably why they're so popular. So there's lepidote, which are the ones that have big leaves and big blooms. Lepidote is the small-leafed ones, the PJMs that have small leaves and they're covered with small blossoms. So those really are the two different groups there are. And you do need to plant both types in soil mixed with peat moss because they like that consistency. So. And the large-leafed ones do exceptionally well if they do not get winter afternoon sun. Some of the real intense colors are pretty. There are red ones too that are just amazing. And that's really the other advantage of the big-leafed ones. There's many more choices. There are some that there's a Finland series, and there's other types of them. There's a lot more colors and a lot more leaf shapes to pick from. And the small-leafed one, the PJMs, there's purple and white and pink, and they're beautiful when they bloom in the middle of May. They're great. They're all either zone 3 or 4. When they're done blooming, they will start. All the rhododendrons will start to bud for the next year. So when they're done blooming, you can help them out by removing the spent flower. I call them spiders because they look like a spider. That way it'll put its energy into new buds. You need to be relatively careful. You don't want to break off any leaves with it, but you just do this and off it comes. And then another flower bud will form and you'll have many, many more flowers. My favorite rhododendron is the one that's blooming right now.
They certainly have some beautiful rhododendrons there, and throughout the region you'll find them.
Yeah, and what a great point about her favorite being the one that's in bloom now. With a lot of our plants is what's in bloom now. So.
That's right. There are, how many, Bob? 800 species we decided, or about that?
About 800 species of rhododendrons, thousands of cultivars. So you have to be a little bit selective. Most obviously are southern plants, and really these new introductions, most from the University of Minnesota, the Northern Lights series, are relatively recent, but they've really changed the color in our spring landscape. They're great hardy plants.
Yeah, they are. Well, let's take a look now at more about the care of rhododendrons and azaleas and some best choices for the Northland. Rhododendrons are part of the heath family, which includes heathers, laurels, and other ornamentals. And while all azaleas are rhododendrons, not all rhododendrons are azaleas. The main difference between the two? Most rhododendrons are evergreen and will keep their leaves. The azaleas we grow here are deciduous. Best for growing in this neck of the woods are the Northern Lights series of azaleas or the Mollis hybrid azaleas. For rhododendrons, choose the PJM hybrid or the Finnish hybrids. Success in growing these woody ornamentals depends on site selection and soil preparation. Both grow best in well-drained acidic soil. In general, the azaleas like more sun, the rhodies more shade, and rhododendrons do need protection from winter sun to prevent leaf burn. Okay, well, again, good information on those woody wonders that we like to call them, but some other stuff I think people might want to know is pruning. When and how do we prune them?
Great question, and if you're pruning and you just want to remove branches, you can kind of do that whenever you want. There really isn't a bad time. However, you're probably going to be taking off blossoms and things like that. Now, if you're just going to prune it after it's done blooming and after the new growth starts to come on it, if you're doing some shaping and things like that. So really depending on what you want to do with the plant. They don't like to be pruned very much, so I would be very cautious about it and take your time with it. So
I would agree. Most of them really have nice form, and they're not going to get too large in the landscape typically. So I just let them go, and then if you're going to prune modestly right after the bloom. I think that's best.
And they're pretty easy to transplant.
Yeah, they're very shallow rooted. That's why when you talked about good drainage and good organic in the soil. So you really want to spend some time preparing your soil bed. We want a very acidic soil. They're in this large group, which includes the blueberries. And you want to drop that pH, and in this case, you can do that a lot of different ways, but acidifying with acid sphagnum peat moss does two things for you. It drops your pH into a range that they're going to enjoy, and then it also holds some of this water. So good drainage, but with some water retention from the high organic, and then as we get drier into the summer months, you want to make sure that you water frequently to keep them healthy.
Okay.
And another great point with rhododendrons and azaleas is they actually set their flower buds the following or the previous fall to when they bloom. So good water, August and September, when those flower buds are setting, is going to help ensure that you get a good bloom then the following spring. So.
Right.
Pam, you made a number of real good points. We don't want to miss the fact that pick hardy varieties, start with the Northern Lights series, got a lot of different colors. The originals were pink. So as a rule of thumb, if you're zone 3, look for the pink hues. If you're zone 4, then you can gravitate into some of the mandarins and the orange and the tangerine. So pink farther north. And then the other big thing, as Tom mentioned, we're going to get these flower buds that are going to develop in the fall. They're wonderful deer food. So you really have to think about protection from the deer.
As with almost everything these days, right?
Almost everything.
Okay. Well, we have some people waiting to ask questions. Our live audience at the home show and our promotion director, Britta Edgerton, has someone with her. Britta?
Yes, thank you for being with us here, sharing your garden questions. We have Brian from Duluth.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. How do we finally rid ourselves of creeping Charlie in our lawn?
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to know too.
Now, it's a real challenge if you aren't going to use any type of chemical. And if you elect to use an herbicide, you'll stay away from the most common herbicides. you want to look for something that's labeled for ivy control. And then I've done some layout and actually did some research on this, and regardless what anyone tells you, in this area, that weed control goes on the 1st of September. And you get much, much better control in the first 2 or 3 weeks of September than what you're going to get after a frost or what you're going to get later in the year. Then you want to remove the environment that gives us an advantage. It likes shady areas. If you can take a tree down, if you can prune it up a little bit, it likes slightly moisture conditions. So anything you can do to improve the drainage. But it becomes a real challenge if you're going to use no chemicals. I know no other way than to actually try to dig and to get those stolons. It's quite an undertaking, but that would be your other choice.
All right. Britta's standing by with another audience member with a question. Britta?
Yes, I have Mark here from Duluth.
Hello, panel. Bob, I spoke to you last fall about this. Some I retained here, and some was lost. But it has to do if I could save my crabapple tree, because it is completely covered in those tiny holes, perfect concentric holes, every branch, every part of the body of the tree.
What type of crab? Could I ask that?
I don't know.
Okay, but it's been with you for a while. It's done real well.
It's about 20-year-old crabapple tree.
Right, and these concentric holes we probably talked were sapsucker damage. And anytime you get these repetitive injuries, you're taking away a little bit of that vascular tissue which conducts the sugars from the leaves down into the root system. So you're interrupting the flow. So it's not going to outright kill the tree. It's going to be very difficult to repair that damage. That being said, there are many crabs, the hopas and others, that are really, really hardy and will continue to produce fruit for you even with this type of damage. So when you get to the point where you're not getting flower, you're not getting fruit, at that point it's time to think about replacing it. So give it another season. Thank you for the question. It's a good one.
All right. Looks like Britta has another audience member. Britta?
Yes, I'm here with Jane from Duluth Heights.
Thank you for taking my question. A little different from the azaleas, but I have a blue hydrangea. It's at least 5 years old. It's never blossomed. The pink hydrangea and the green hydrangea in the same garden blossom every year. What am I doing wrong with the blue one?
Well, and we actually just talked about this because we all have that same problem too. And a lot of times it's actually the plant variety was probably brought to market a little too soon, and the grower of that is experiencing that problem around the country where they're going out of bloom. Now, a couple of things you can do. They probably need more sun than they're getting or that they were sold to use. So if you can move it, if it's 5 years old or newer, you can move it pretty easily. Try to get it into the sun, increase the fertility without too much nitrogen in it, because you may be forcing a lot of beautiful, lush green growth and it's not going into bloom. So more sun and a little bit of increased fertility without a lot of additional nitrogen.
Does it have anything to do with the pruning of it?
The interesting thing about the hydrangeas is some do bloom on new wood, some bloom on old wood. New wood meaning, you know, you could cut it down in the spring of the year and then you can get bloom later in the year, like a PJM. The old wood, the flower buds, like with our azaleas we talked about there, set the bloom in the fall. The thing that's really makes this interesting is some bloom on both new and old. So what you want to do is you want to evaluate it, take a look at the plant and see if you see buds that are enlarging at this point. Those you wouldn't prune out. Anything that's just dead or woody material, those you could prune out. Better sun, like Tom said, better fertility. And the other thing, the blue color is associated with acid conditions. So you could use an acidifying fertilizer. You could try to use a little bit of ammonium sulfate. Try to drop the pH. So try all of those things. And then if it doesn't work, we've got some good replacement varieties we might suggest.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you, audience. We'll be back for more questions in just a bit. But right now it's time for our weekly garden tour, where we take you to the home of a longtime gardener on the western outskirts of the Twin Ports who recently decided she needed a complete change of pace.
My name is May Anderson, and I live in Smithville, and I want to welcome you to my garden. I changed it completely 4 years ago. I had a traditional garden with a lot of flowers, tall flowers, and I specialized in iris. And I just needed a change. And I just wanted a calm, serene place. I like a lot of funky trees. You can see they all weep or bend or something. And there's junipers, and there's a weeping larch over there. And we have little elm trees here, or I should say shrubs. This is a frosty elm here. And of course, this is a tiger eye sumac. What I have is mostly ground cover, as you can see, and there's many different kinds of thyme. Like that's a woolly thyme there. And then throughout the garden is it's a minus thyme. It's the various tiniest thyme you can get, and they're all walkable. So, and that's what I was striving for, is to be able to walk on it. And they cover the rocks, and I kind of propagate it then. And then I have, of course, the bark, and I like the pine bark. There's a cherry tart sedum here, and creepers. That's Alyssomachia aurea, creeping jenny. And there's quite a bit of sedum, and then there's hens and chicks. Things that kind of spread out. Sweet autumn clematis. Mine lasts a little longer because it's in the shade. But this is kind of unusual here. It's a bush clematis. It's called roguchi. And then for color, of course, I just added pots. I try and make a good color combination. And I like tropicals. That's a diplodenia. That's a favorite of mine, I think. I especially like the golden wings rose.
So how long have you been a gardener?
Forever. My mother was a gardener, and I think I have her genes, I guess. Well, I think it just takes me away from all of life's problems, and I can concentrate on making things beautiful.
Again, thanks to May. She did a nice job in that garden.
And May has been a friend of mine for years, and such a wonderful gardener, a master gardener with St. Louis County, and very involved in the Garden Flower Society and sharing her knowledge.
Wonderful. Okay, we have more questions for you guys from our audience here at the home show. So, Britta, start us out.
I'm here with Patty from Cloquet.
I have a question for you. I plant tomatoes every year by seed, but some of them, sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. Well, this year they're about 3-4 inches tall, and I'm afraid that I'm not going to either overwater them or not put enough water on them or something.
Very good questions. A lot of people try from seed, and the fact you've got them 3 or 4 inches is very positive, because we have a condition called damping off, where that seed may not emerge from the soil surface, but you're beyond that at this point. I think what you're going to be challenged with now is providing enough light, because they're going to continue to grow. So I would say, at this point, you haven't transplanted yet? Once. Okay, be prepared to continue to transplant, supply the light you need. You probably, because we're very early yet, and we can still get frost potentially up into June. So you might want to be ready with a fluorescent light fixture to provide them additional light that they're going to need to get you into late May and early June. Thank you, good question, appreciate it.
All right. Okay, looks like we have one more from Britta in the audience.
Yes, I'm here with Rita from Duluth.
Yes. My question is, my boxwoods received a lot of dead, well, I don't know if it's quite dead yet, but they're frozen ends. Should I just prune them now, or should I wait? Will those ends produce leaves?
I would wait a little bit, see where the growth comes from, and then prune them. Boxwood, for everybody in the audience, is an evergreen, so it keeps that green foliage year-round, and a beautiful addition to our gardens, and shaped very nicely into compact, nice shapes in the garden. But I would wait a little while, see what the growth does, and then do your pruning after you get that initial bud break on them. So.
And aren't the boxwood a little challenging to grow
Yes.
around here? So congratulations for doing what you have with them.
Absolutely. Been people that are going to try that, because it does prune up so nicely in the hedges, but you can expect some winter damage that's going to occur there. Let it grow out. Good advice, Tom. And then you always have time to prune.
All right. Okay, Britta, another question from our audience.
And our next question here is from Bill in Duluth.
Thanks for taking my question. You kind of touched on it already. The weather has been very mild this year compared to the last 2 winters. Do you think that'll allow us to get our gardens in a little bit early this year?
That's a great question. Of course, we're all gamblers, aren't we? I love the question. I think that what you really want to look at is, if you're going to talk about direct seeding, you want to look at those seeds that will germinate early even when soil temperatures are cool. So the first thing you want to think about is some early garden spinach that'll do beautifully. Even now you could probably plant that from seed. But remember, frost sensitive, so be ready with some kind of covering material. But all your salad greens, perhaps if you take a little risk, you can plant within the next week to 10 days. But you want to be ready to cover, particularly on some of these like spinach, which can't take any frost.
Now, our person who asked the question is a flower gardener.
Excellent gardener.
Excellent
yes.
gardener. And as far as any of our tender annuals and things like that, really, it's probably still going to be about 7 weeks before you get those in the ground. Late May to early June, even in the best of springs, we really still want to keep an eye on that first frost-free day before we take a lot of risk with those things.
And what Tom says, and most people don't realize, is even if you don't get a frost on some of these frost-sensitive materials would like it a little bit warmer, your marigolds, perhaps your petunias, tomatoes as an example, you're not going to get a frost, but they really hate 35, 36 degrees, and it hardens them off and takes them a long time to grow out of that. So oftentimes, in most years, you don't gain a lot by going too early. So I think you're really looking at end of May, early part of June, just to be on the safe side.
All right, thanks for the questions. Well, right now we want to go on to a segment of our program where we feature the photos of area gardeners. Here's tonight's Grow and Show. Vicki Yulin started planting gardens at her Keewatin home 12 years ago, beginning with a clean slate. Her perennial hibiscus have performed beautifully over the years. And the cup and saucer vine has proved to be a vigorous climber with large late summer blooms of muted purple. For the Boulevard project, the Yulins laid newspaper and mulch over existing lawn, and now they and their neighbors enjoy a variety of perennial favorites along the street and sidewalk. The Monarda attract the attention of neighborhood bumblebees too. From Les and Julie Lepisto of Big Falls, 2 views of their garden pond and the picturesque pink bloom of a water lily. If you have garden photos to share, we'd love to put them on our program. Email them to greatgardening@wdse.org or send to 632 Niagara Court, Duluth, and let us show what you grow. We always get such beautiful pictures sent in from our gardeners around the area, but we're encouraging you to please keep sending them. We can always use more, and we like to put them on the program every week if we can. Here's a couple of follow-up questions. These are from audience members who didn't necessarily want to ask them, but they were willing to write them down here. And one is about a hardy hibiscus and how to grow that in our area. We saw the beautiful one in Keewatin. What do you guys think?
Well, there are some varieties and getting to be more varieties of the hardy hibiscus that folks can try. Certainly Keewatin is kind of stretching the boundary for that. But a couple things you really need: lots of heat. So plant it where it gets a lot of afternoon heat. So south side or west side of a house or a garage or fence. And then also good moisture through those hot periods of our summer. And it will get hot, especially in those locations on our property. So good moisture and also good heat.
Okay. All right, this is from Ruth in Danbury. I have very sandy soil. Any suggestions for low maintenance perennials, as well as deer-proof ones? And we're always looking for that.
Well, the low maintenance isn't too hard. The deer-proof's another story.
Yeah.
Sandy soils can be really, really great because you can modify them very easily. And with sands, she wants to think about 2 things. She wants to think about organic material for holding moisture. And then she wants to think about the fact that sands don't hold nutrients. So you're always going to have to add a little bit of additional fertilizer, a time release, or a granular, or a composted manure, something like that annually. You're going to always have to supply them. Deer-proof, Tom? Go ahead.
Leave that one to Tom.
Bleeding hearts, pulmonaria
Bleeding heart, okay.
are both good choices. Philopendula's another great choice. Of course, hostas, those of us that have grown them know that the deer love those.
Deer love the hostas.
So there are a couple of choices in perennials that folks can try. Shrubs, things like bush honeysuckle, and lots of new varieties of that out that people can try as well. Good for the shade and also good for deer resistance. So.
All right.
I was just going to comment real quickly that some of these, like peonies, which aren't a problem, or rhubarb, except when they're just emerging. So be sure you've got some of these protected. You can protect with hardware cloth, or you can protect with netting early, just as they're coming out, and then the deer don't seem to bother. But those tender buds of most of these, they will.
All right, let's see if we can get through 3 or 4 more. Connie from Hibbing wants to know when's the best time to transplant rhubarb and roses.
Right now? Yeah, I think as soon as you get a spade in the ground, move that rhubarb right now.
Okay, and how do you overwinter jasmine? Ours die in the house.
Well, a couple things you want to do with that, and I have a beautiful jasmine in my indoor plant collection, and good sunlight and good consistent moisture, so don't let it dry out too much between waterings, and also making sure it gets good sunlight. So.
We're going to sneak one more in. Roger from Duluth. If I planted seeds like carrots, beets, etc. right now, would they grow a month or 2 from now? Would they die or would they germinate?
Those are good questions. First off, with all of those, you really don't have to rush the season because we've got plenty of season, but I know it's tough sometimes to resist. Of the 2, beets will transplant quite readily. So he could start those and plan on moving them out there. They're both are weather hardy, winter hardy. The carrots, because of that long tat root, he's going to have more trouble with. So of the 2, if you want to transplant and move them out, I'd give beets a try, but be ready. At warm temperatures, they're going to go very quickly, and then there's shock coming outside. So I think you're probably better off, even if you want to try that, waiting just a little bit longer before you seed.
Well, guess what? That's all the time that we have left. And thank you so much to all of you for being here with us tonight. And all of you who joined us here at the home show and shared your questions and input. Bob Olin, Tom Casper, as always, really some vital information for gardeners as we begin another season, and we thank you for that. We want to say a special thanks to our crew for making this home show event possible. And from all of us here, thanks for watching and enjoy the garden.